A volcanic eruption of sound detonated over Constitution Avenue, the raw power of blaring trumpets, and thunderous drums slamming into the humid Washington, D.C. air like a declaration of war. Thousands of voices roared in unison, chanting Trump, Trump, with a ferocity that shook the ground, as red, white, and blue banners lashed violently in a restless wind, their colors bleeding into a frenetic blur. Camera shutters snapped like machine gun fire, capturing every angle of the surreal spectacle. Donald Trump's 79th birthday parade on June 14, 2025. It was a coliseum of American excess, a carnival of power, with colossal golden balloons, shaped as 79 looming over a stage, draped in star-spangled glory, confetti cannons poised to shower the crowd in a glittering climax. Reporters shoved through the sweaty throng, their live feeds crackling with urgency, shouting over the chaos to deliver updates to millions watching worldwide. But beneath the surface of this orchestrated jubilation, a dark current pulsed, an invisible tremor of unease, as if the very earth beneath the Capitol knew a reckoning was coming. Then it struck like lightning. A low, guttural hum sliced through the revelry, silencing the crowd in a heartbeat, as a black SUV, sleek and predatory, rolled to a menacing halt at the parade's perimeter. Its tinted windows mirrored the distorted faces of onlookers, reflecting confusion and a creeping dread. A ripple of silence spread outward, heads whipping, around cheers dying on lips as all eyes locked onto the vehicle. Secret Service agents snapped to attention, hands darting to earpieces, muscles tensing, as if bracing for an unseen threat. The driver's door swung open with a slow, deliberate creak, and out stepped Captain Ibrahim Traoré, his deep, olive military uniform a stark contrast to the gaudy patriotism surrounding him. Medals glinted on his chest like fragments of a shattered past, catching the sunlight with a cold, accusing gleam. His face was an unyielding mask, stern, carved from grief and resolve, betraying nothing but promising everything. A diplomatic guest from Burkina Faso, his invitation had been a hollow gesture, a checkbox for international optics. Few thought he'd dare to show. None could have predicted the cataclysm he was about to unleash. As Traoré advanced toward the platform, his boots striking the pavement with the precision of a war drum, the crowd parted instinctively, a sea of uncertainty in his wake. On stage, Donald Trump, the eternal showman, stood bathed in spotlight, his signature grin plastered wide, one hand already raised in a rehearsed welcome. The cameras zoomed in, hungry for the photo op, the fleeting handshake that would symbolize unity, or at least its illusion. But Traoré halted just short of the stage's edge, his piercing gaze bypassing Trump entirely, drilling instead into the nearest lens, then sweeping over the ocean of spectators with a weight that pinned them in place. When he spoke, his voice was a low, resonant thunderclap slicing through the festive din with the sharpness of a guillotine. Before I shake any hand, I must speak a truth the world has buried deep and chosen to forget. The words detonated like a bomb. Trump's grin faltered, a visible twitch of uncertainty, cracking his facade as his hand hovered awkwardly mid-air. Reporters froze, pens stilled, live feeds buzzing with static, as producers screamed orders in the background. The crowd, moments ago a roaring beast of patriotism, stood paralyzed, caught in the suffocating gravity of a moment they couldn't grasp. A Trump aide, face drained of color, lurched forward, whispering urgently, his suit jacket flapping in the sudden breeze. But Trump, whether from shock, curiosity, or some deeper instinct, raised a hand for silence, his eyes narrowing as they locked onto Traoré. The stage, the banners, the golden balloons, all of it, shrank into insignificance, dwarfed by the sheer force of the man before them. Even the wind seemed to pause, as if nature itself awaited the storm about to break. Stepping to the microphone, Traoré's voice deepened, each syllable a hammer, striking hot iron, reverberating through the stunned hush with unrelenting power. I stand here not as a politician, not as a soldier, but as the son of a woman who was told her pain was worthless. I hail from a land where children learn to bury their parents by the age of 10, while the world offers hollow thoughts and prayers, but never justice. His gaze seared into the audience, peeling back layers of comfortable denial, forcing them to see what they'd long ignored. Today, I declare that African dignity is not a gift we grovel, for it is our birthright. No celebration, no parade, no tower of power can erase that unyielding truth. A restless murmur stirred a cocktail of discomfort, awe, and defiance, as some in the crowd averted their eyes, unable to bear the intensity, while others leaned into the raw, unfiltered conviction in his tone. Behind the stage, the massive birthday banner swayed ominously in a gust, its golden letters glinting, as if mocking the moment. Traoré reached into his jacket with a deliberate slowness, his every movement charged with purpose, and withdrew a worn, creased photograph, its edges frayed from years of reverent touch. He held it aloft for the cameras, the image grainy but gut-wrenching, a dark-skinned woman, her face etched with age and sorrow, kneeling in barren dirt, tears carving rivers down her weathered cheeks. "This is my mother," he said, his voice fracturing for the first time, a tremor of raw grief piercing his stoic shell. "This was taken after she lost her only sister because our village had no doctor, no clean water, no shred of help from a world that turned its back. She believed America could change everything until she learned it changes only what feeds its own hunger." The crowd reeled, as if slapped gasps cascading like a shockwave through the masses. A few jeered, their boos sharp and jarring, but they were swiftly drowned by the oppressive weight of the moment. Others stared eyes wide with confusion, shame, or a dawning horror, while a smattering of applause erupted, hesitant at first, then swelling with a desperate need to acknowledge the pain laid bare. Cameras whirled in a frenzy, capturing the fracture of a celebration into something far heavier. Trump's jaw clenched so tightly, it seemed his teeth might crack, his hand dropping limp to his side, the showman's mask slipping, as he grappled with a narrative spiraling beyond his control. Somewhere in the audience, a woman's sob shattered the tension, raw and unscripted, a sound that echoed every unspoken wound Traoré dragged into the light. The parade's festive veneer had shattered, exposing a raw, bleeding underbelly of truth no one was ready to confront. But Traoré was only beginning. His hand dipped into his jacket once more, this time pulling out a folded letter, its edges yellowed and frayed, as if it bore the scars of decades of buried secrets. He raised it high, letting the media lenses zoom in, his voice steadying into a quiet, deadly thunder. This was written by a U.S. oil company to a dictator in West Africa. It promised weapons in exchange for silence. That dictator butchered over 30,000 of his own people. One of them was my cousin, a boy who dreamed of being a teacher. The crowd staggered under the revelation, a woman near the front collapsing into the arms of a stranger, her faint gasp swallowed by the rising tide of disbelief. Murmurs swelled into a chaotic hum, voices overlapping in a cacophony of shock and outrage. "Why is no one stopping him?" a man muttered near the barricade. His MAGA hat tilted askew, but the answer hung heavy, and unspoken truth, once unleashed, is a force more dangerous than any weapon, and Traoré had just fired a cannon straight into the heart of the celebration. Secret Service agents edged closer to Trump, their movements taut and precise, hands hovering near earpieces, as if awaiting a command that never came. Trump stared straight ahead, his expression a tempest of confusion, anger, and something unreadable, perhaps a flicker of dread or a crack in the armor of denial. Melania, Trump seated beside him with the poise of a statue, showed the first fracture in her composed facade, her eyes darting to her husband, with a whispered word too faint for microphones to capture. Traoré noticed, locking eyes with her for a fleeting electric moment, not with hostility, but with a piercing, unspoken understanding. "Some on this stage have glimpsed the truth," he said, his voice slow and deliberate, each word a stone dropped into still water, but were chained to silence by forces greater than themselves. The crowd's murmur grew into a restless roar, a wave of uncertainty crashing against the barricades. Traoré's tone softened, but his words carved deeper still, slicing into the marrow of complacency. "Before I was a soldier, I was a brother. My little brother Amadou died at 9, drowned in a river poisoned by foreign mining waste. A company that poured millions into campaigns right here in this country, while my brother's life was worth less than the dirt they mined. He pulled out a small folded white cloth from his pocket, a torn fragment of a child's shirt, holding it up as a gentle breeze caught its frayed edge, making it dance like a ghost in the air. "This isn't politics," he said, his voice dropping to a haunting whisper. "This is pain you've never been forced to see." Even the cameras seemed to tremble lenses, capturing the fabric's frail, poignant sway. Trump shifted in his seat, visibly uncomfortable. His hands clasped so tightly, his knuckles whitened while in the back rows. A woman sobbed openly, her cries, a jagged blade through the stunned hush. Above the stage, the giant Trump 79 birthday banner swayed precariously, and in a surreal twist of fate, a rope snapped under the wind's sudden fury. Half the banner collapsed awkwardly over the side, leaving only the letters forming truth visible from the crowd's vantage point. A collective gasp swept through the spectators' phones, flashing like a storm of lightning, as the image spread like wildfire across social media. Was it coincidence? Or a message from something greater? Traoré glanced at the fallen banner, then turned to Trump, his tone gentle yet unyielding, a velvet glove over an iron fist. "I didn't come to ruin your birthday, Mr. Trump. But perhaps the truth chose this day to rise from its grave." Trump remained silent, his jaw-locked tight eyes fixed on some distant, invisible point as the crowd held its breath, the air thick with anticipation. A military marching band scheduled to perform at that precise moment stood frozen in formation, their conductor lowering his baton with a trembling hand. No one dared interrupt the raw, unscripted history unfolding before them. Children perched on their parents' shoulders, watched with wide, uncomprehending eyes, their tiny flags drooping in the stillness, while even Trump's loudest supporters, clad in red caps and waving signs, sat quietly, hands clasped, uncertainty etched into their faces. Traoré's voice rose once more, no longer just addressing the crowd, but reaching through the cameras to the world, beyond a plea and a command woven into every syllable. "If you can hear me, remember my brother's name, Amadou. Remember the villages erased from maps like Toubé in northern Burkina Faso, reduced to ashes by mercenaries hunting lithium beneath the soil, while the world signed deals over champagne and looked the other way." He pulled out another laminated photo from his uniform, his fingers steady, despite the weight of memory, revealing a scorched classroom, its walls blackened, with a pair of tiny sandals, lying abandoned beside a torn math book, the pages fluttering in an unseen wind. My uncle taught there under a mango tree with a broken chalkboard, teaching children to dream, despite having nothing. His last message on a borrowed phone was, "They are coming. Protect the children." No news covered it. No nation condemned it. But I remember, and I will not let them be forgotten. Sniffles echoed through the crowd, even from hardened camera crews who lowered their lenses for a moment, wiping eyes behind equipment. A young black child, hoisted on his father's shoulders near the front, wiped tears with a small fist the image captured and shared across the globe in seconds, a silent cry that needed no words. Then a new jarring interruption. A man in a dark suit rushed forward from the VIP section, his face slick with sweat, whispering urgently into Traoré's ear. The captain's expression shifted, a shadow of fierce urgency crossing his features as he returned to the microphone, his voice now edged with a raw, immediate fire. "Ladies and gentlemen, I have just received word of a mining accident in eastern Mali. Children, innocent children, are trapped beneath rubble as we speak. The same multinational company responsible for the poison that killed my brother is a sponsor of this very parade. They've blocked cameras, jammed phone signals, but they couldn't block me." He turned to the camera's eyes, blazing with defiance. "To the families watching, clutching hope in the dark, we hear you. You are not forgotten." In a daring, almost reckless move, he extended his phone toward Trump, the device trembling slightly in his outstretched hand. "Sir, will you speak to them, or will silence be your answer once again?" Trump didn't take the phone. The line crackled through the speakers, faint, but harrowing cries of desperation, a woman's scream for her son slicing through the air like a knife through flesh. The crowd was a sea of held breaths, a suffocating tension gripping every heart as millions online, watching the live stream, began to donate, tweet, and organize rescue efforts not for politics or party, but for the sheer, undeniable call of humanity, sparked by one unbreakable voice that refused to be silenced. Traoré stepped back, his mission searingly clear. As Trump finally moved to the microphone, his voice unsteady, a rare crack in the armor of a man built on bravado. Captain Traoré, I didn't expect this. You said something that hit me hard about dignity, about not being invisible. Maybe I forgot that. Maybe a whole lot of us did. He turned to the crowd, struggling for words, his usual bombast replaced by a faltering sincerity. To every African child watching, to every family in pain, we see you. We hear you. Gasps erupted like thunder, followed by slow, hesitant applause, even from Melania, who stood beside him, tears glistening in her eyes, as she clapped her face a mask of raw, unguarded emotion. Traoré nodded once, not in agreement, but in acknowledgement of a moment that against all odds mattered. But his work was far from over. Descending the stage steps with quiet purpose, he walked to the front row, where a young American boy, no older than 6, waved a small paper flag with trembling hands. Traoré knelt before him, his towering frame softening in an instant. "What's your name, little one?" "Liam," the boy replied, voice small but clear. "This flag, did your dad give it to you?" The boy looked down, eyes welling. "No, my dad was a soldier. He died in Africa. Mom says he served freedom." Traoré's hand rested gently on his shoulder, a gesture heavy with shared loss. Sometimes both sides lose fathers. Sometimes both are just pawns in a game they didn't choose. The boy's mother, standing behind, wept silently, her hands covering her mouth, as the image of captain and child, bound by invisible scars of war, exploded online, a shared wound that transcended borders and banners. As the sun dipped low, casting long shadows over the parade grounds, Traoré moved to the back of the crowd, where an elderly African-American man sat in a weathered wheelchair, his tattered military jacket, adorned with medals, barely clinging to the fabric. "Captain," the man whispered, voice breaking with age and pain. "I served in Vietnam, lost my leg, came back to a country that never saluted me. Today, I saw a real fight, not with bullets but with truth." Tears streamed down his lined face as Traoré knelt beside him, taking his trembling hand in a grip of quiet strength. Their hug captured by a lone camera, silent centuries of pain in a single searing frame. Twitter erupted in a digital storm. "Let Africa be seen" trended globally, a cry echoing from Lagos to Chicago, from Cape Town to Harlem. Traoré didn't linger for the closing speeches, the hollow fireworks, or the forced smiles. He walked toward his waiting car, his silhouette cutting through the fading light, as a breathless reporter chased after him, microphone thrust forward. "Captain, why come here if not for the spotlight? Why risk everything?" He stopped, turning briefly his eyes, a well of unspoken stories. "Because dignity isn't won in headlines," he replied, voice low and final. "It's earned in the silence of those who suffer." With that, he stepped into the vehicle, the door closing with a thud that echoed like a gavel strike. Inside the White House hours later, Trump sat alone in a dimly lit office, staring at a letter from a Ghanaian mother named Miriam, its words of loss still open on his desk, a ghost he couldn't banish. Outside, across the city, African flags rose in the hands of strangers, not in protest, but in fierce, unshakable pride. What began as a birthday parade had become a funeral for lies, a crucible for truth, and Captain Ibrahim Traoré had ignited a flame that no power, no silence, no border could extinguish. The world watched, wept, and remembered not just a man, but the millions of voices he carried, rising from forgotten places to demand their rightful echo, between skyscrapers and across oceans. If this moment sears your soul, if a single word grips your heart, Let it be known. Share this story. Speak the names of Amadou Toubé Mark.